Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome everyone to our special City Council meeting of November 9th, 2022. It's a special meeting only because typically we meet on Tuesdays, and because of yesterday's election, we are meeting tonight. In the interest of government transparency with regards to deliberations and decisions made by the City Council and according to open meeting law, since this meeting was posted as a Zoom meeting, this meeting is recorded by video and audio and will be conducted by remote participation. Additionally, all votes taken by the City Council during this and future remote meetings will be by roll call vote. If you're calling in on a phone, you can press *9 to request to speak. If you're watching on a computer or device, there's a raised hand button that you can tap or press to request to speak. Please use either of these options during oral communications to be recognized. It's a finding of the City of Gloucester that no individual shall be denied equal treatment or opportunity because of their age, ancestry, color, disability, including intellectual and developmental mental disability, family status, immigration status, gender, identity or expression, military status, marital status, national origin, race, religion, sex, or sexual orientation. In this vein, we as city councilors do not condone language that is discriminatory or offensive and will not accept it at city meetings. I'd like to begin by announcing the names of the city councilors that are on the call. I'm Val Gilman. I'm Ward 4 City Councilor and the Council President. We have Jason Grow at large. We have Sean Nolan, who's our Vice President and Ward 5 City Councilor. We have Scott Memard, who is our Ward 1 City Councilor. We have Frank Majota, who is our Ward 3 City Councilor. We have Tony Gross, who is at large City Councilor. We have Tracy O'Neill, who is a Ward 2 City Councilor, and Councilor Jamie O'Hara, who is an at-large City Councilor. So all of our City Councilors are here today. And I'd like to introduce some members of staff. We have John Dunn, our CFO. We have Jill Cahill, our Chief Administrative Officer. We have Kenny Costa, who is our auditor. And we have 3 members of the Assessor's Office, Nancy Pappas, Gary Johnstone, and Tim Good. And we'll be hearing from them later on when we get into the tax classification. So I think that is all. Let me just check the list of extras to see if there are any other folks that work for city staff that are on the call. Nope. I think that's all for now. So I will ask our, oh, and of course our city clerk. Oh, Jeff Worthy just jumped on the call as well. Jeff Worthy, would you show your face so we can, you can say hello to us?
1 second.
Okay. And we also want to make sure that we welcome our Madam Clerk, Joanne Sinos, who is recovering from a very, very long few weeks. And it's admirable the amount of work that in professionalism your entire department had during this election. So thank you, Joanne. And hopefully you can stay awake for us tonight. Appreciate that.
Okay, thank you.
So with that in line, I will ask Madam Clerk to tell us what the next first order of business is.
First order of business is oral communications.
The public shall have the opportunity at every regularly scheduled meeting to be heard under oral communications on matters not appearing on the agenda. Oral communications shall allow any resident who has a request or complaint of any nature relative to city business to appear before the council, state their problem without debate, and the matter shall be referred to the proper agency through the office of the mayor. The resident will be notified within a 2-week period relative to the disposition of same, and a copy shall be forwarded to the city council. Persons speaking under oral communications shall be limited to 3 minutes each. The council president shall not allow complaints as to individual performance. Is there anyone on the call that would like to speak to our city council for up to 3 minutes for matters not on the agenda? I see 2 hands are raised, Mary Ann and Susan Goodell. So if you would bring one of them in, Joanne, that would be great.
Mary Ann had her hand raised first.
Okay, Mary Ann, would you introduce yourself and your address, and you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Val. Mary Ann Albert Boucher, 93 Mount Pleasant Avenue.
as most of you know, I live on Mount Pleasant Avenue. And each morning for the last several weeks or few weeks, it sounds like the big dig in Boston outside my home. Engrenese and Sons, the hired contractors for the Mount Pleasant Avenue pipe replacement work, are true professionals. They've been here outside of my home for days. We had an undetected gas line leak. They have been more than professional. And I just want to tip my hat to each and every one of them. They are eager to help each and every resident who have had any type of issue. I had an undetected gas line, and they did the job, and they did it with such ease. I know there have been more than at least another 4 or 5 undetected or unlisted gas lines, and they took care of those. But I will ask, as you all got an email, I will ask that our city, Bruce Tarr and Margaret Ferrante, anyone, to please form a committee to try to find a better way to detect the gas lines in the city before we have another explosion like we did on Eastern Avenue years ago at Wayne Sargent's house. We're lucky. We're very fortunate. They hit the line here. I had to leave within minutes, and I just don't want to see anybody get hurt. But this team is an incredible team. So my hat is off to all of them. They've truly done a wonderful job. So thank you.
Thank you, Mary Ann. I might like to acknowledge Pam Toby, who is our Director of Communications and Constituent Service, who is also on the call. And Susan Goodell, you're welcome to speak to us for up to 3 minutes. Introduce yourself and your address, and you have the floor.
I'm Susan Goodall. I live at 15 Canonicus Road in Gloucester. And I would like to first thank you guys for having the beach parking lots open later this year than usual. The reason I want to talk to you is that I'd like to see them open all winter. The reason at Winkersheek, the main reason is safety. When the main parking lot is closed, there's a very small winter parking lot, and that parking lot fills up extremely fast. Last year, it was often filled on weekday afternoons and almost always on the weekend. When this happens, people park along Atlantic, which makes that a single lane road. And then you have the issue of people, some with young children, some handicapped, trying to walk down the road and get to the beach or get back to their cars after being on the beach. At the same time, you have cars coming in trying to find a place to park. A lot of them go down and go around the little parking lot hoping to be lucky. Some people wait there and idle, hoping someone will soon come out and they can get a place. It's chaos, and I think it's an accident that's waiting to happen. The other reason for keeping them open is access. Good Harbor doesn't really have the problem of parking, I guess, unless you live on one of those side streets. But the little bridge, the walking bridge that crosses the creek, that gets slippery in the winter. But the main problem is that the tide often takes the sand out. And when that happens, it can be like 1 foot to 1.5 foot drop from the end of the walk down to the beach, which is very difficult for someone who's elderly, handicapped, or has little children, particularly getting back up. I know there's a parking at the other end of the beach and that access is good, but the main access seems to be over that little footbridge. At Winkersheek, the access is not too bad, but the best access for someone handicapped is at the end of the residential parking. And that's a long way for a handicapped person to walk in the winter to get to the beach. So I appreciate you listening to me, and I hope you'll take this under consideration. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Susan. Any other folks on the call would like to speak to the council for up to 3 minutes for matters not on the agenda? Seeing none, next order of business. Oh, wait, hold on. Deborah Liakos. Madam Clerk, would you bring her in? Deborah, if you could introduce yourself and your address, and you have up to 3 minutes to talk to us about anything that's not on the agenda.
Hi, my name is Debbie Liakos, 41 Woodward Avenue. First and foremost, I want to thank a couple of our city councils that recently attended a meeting that I held with my neighbors, Sean Nolan, our Ward 5 councilor, and our councilor at large, Jeff Worthley, who attended our meeting in regards to road repairs on private roads, which has been a huge issue for the city. And I do understand there's a committee that is working on that and changing ordinances and what have you. That being said, I've reviewed some of the policies about some changes that have been made between 2014 and 2018, which has made it more difficult for people on statutory private roads to get any kind of relief in regards to pothole repair. My road was constructed 2003 with a major sewer project. Quite frankly, it was poorly constructed. My family's been on this street for 57 years, and I've never seen this road in this condition. Again, it was poorly constructed. I do not believe it met construction standards. The top coat in many places is probably a ½ inch thick. I know construction standard minimum is 1.5 inches. I know you guys are working. There's that working group trying to help us. I'm just urging the council to try to keep pushing to do something, and perhaps we can get the state law changed that will free up some funds for some statutory private roads. As you all are aware, a great percentage of the roads in the city of Gloucester are statutory private, which makes it difficult for the city to free up funds, as we all know. I think I'm pretty well versed in what's going on. Sean and Jeff have been great about, getting back to us and giving us information and giving us all the legalities of it. I've also met with Mike Hale about it. I have to tell you, I am frustrated that I get the pushback just to get some potholes fixed, especially in the fact that many of us are still paying a sewer betterment on this road. We were in the 20-year program. We got about 3 years left. And the road started falling apart about a year and a half after it was built. I would hope that the city could accept some responsibility for it, as David Knowlton, a former DPW employee, was supposed to oversee this project. And quite frankly, I don't think the project was well managed. I know it's a lot of water under the bridge for a lot of you. You probably, aren't aware of the situation, but I was hoping we could at least get some repairs. I have to tell you that I did hire a contractor to do some temporary repairs. It's coming out of our pockets. And I think another thing that frustrates me is the fact that we're getting some private roads that are having major road construction, like Overlook Avenue, that just had deep water and fire hydrants put in. They got a whole brand new road. It's private, and they didn't pay a dime. Repairs to Laurel Street, where the city has a lot of abutting land, got some major repairs with public funds. That road was falling apart as well. So again, a little frustrated, but again, I can't thank Sean and Jeff enough, and we'll continue to work on it, but I just want to be heard. That's all. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Deb. Appreciate
Thanks.
it. Any other folks want to speak to the council for up to 3 minutes for matters not on the agenda? Seeing none. Next order of business, Madam Clerk.
Is the confirmation of new appointment, City-Owned Cemeteries Advisory Commission, Matthew Murray, term to expire 2/14/25.
Okay, I'll let Councilor Nolan, who chairs O&A, lead this conversation. Councilor Nolan.
Excellent. Matthew, are you in the audience tonight?
I'm here, yes. Can you guys see me?
I can.
Okay, wonderful. It's always kind of hard to tell when it's on one of these webinar things if anyone can actually see me. So,
All right, so if before I read the motion, do you want to give a few moments to the council to introduce yourself and your deeds?
I think everyone here knows me. And from the agenda, I have been appointed. I suppose I have the temporary appointment to the Cemetery Advisory Commission from the mayor. We had our meeting last night, which didn't overlap with this meeting because of the election. Did anyone have any questions, or is this for me, or anything, or?
Any questions from the council?
Yeah.
Excellent. Matthew, you're going to be a great fit. You, as an alternate member, you're very capable to be a full member, and I'm very excited about this. So without any further ado, I'd like to read the motion. On a motion by Councilor Harris, seconded by Councilor Worthley, the Ordinance Administration Committee voted by roll call, 3 in favor, 0 opposed, to recommend that the City Council appoint Matthew Murray, alternate member, to the City-Owned Cemeteries Advisory Committee, term to expire 2/14/25, and I so move.
Second.
The motion made by Counselor Nolan and seconded by Counselor O'Hara. Is there a discussion, councilors? Counselor Grow.
I want to thank Matthew for his continued civic engagement. It's very much appreciated. Thank you.
Anyone else? Counselor Worthley.
Yes, so I was happy to fill in for Council Margiotta at the O&A meeting. I think it was Halloween night. He was probably with his kids, and we were talking about cemeteries, so there's a little parallel there, I think. It wasn't that scary meeting, though, but I made a little joke. I just want to clarify the record that Matt Murray was working on the cemeteries committee. He's also the chairperson of the Democratic City Committee, and I was making a little joke about drumming up votes. I think he ran with it. I just want to make sure we know that that's not the case. I'm happy to support Matt. He's done some great work in the city, and he's going to continue to do some great work. Could I ask Matt to tell us the 2 things he had suggested at the O&A meeting that would be helpful for the committee? Is that appropriate to ask at this point?
Sure. Matt, would you like to address Councilor Worthley's question?
Oh, absolutely. So at the O&A meeting, I believe either Councilor Worthley or someone else asked what I would think that the most important thing going forward, or what I would do if I was mayor or emperor for the day. Because actually, I think you have to be emperor for the day, because I don't think the mayor could just, as you know, snap his fingers and his or her fingers and do this. But there's 2 things I would love to see. I would love to see physically, I'd love to see all the trees taken down along the MBTA line near the Clark and First Parish burial grounds, because people always care more about those places when they can see them. Any public space, really, as anyone would know. But we always, whenever we take down the trees there, clear the brush there, people start writing letters in the GDT talking about how, oh, I was riding the train today and I was so surprised to realize this place was here. Just as the train is slowing down, well, when we have train service, of course. And the other thing is to create a more permanent structure. And we had a conversation about this last night in the meeting, to create a permanent structure in this city, which other cities actually have for, it's not exactly perpetual care, but so that the, not just that the cemeteries, especially our historic burial grounds, the 10 that are historic, we have 5 that are active. There are 10 that are inactive, but still property of the city, not counting, of course, the private ones that are owned by, say, the Archdiocese, the Methodist Church, the Universalist Church, or the Jewish burial ground in West Gloucester. Right now we have a fantastic group of people, not just the committee, but people who are around the committees, like Rich and Kathy Clark, Russell Hobbs and other folks like that, and Rich Sarabian from down in Woburn, who are caring for our cemeteries and our burial grounds. The trouble is we need to have a more permanent plan, because as cemeteries remind us, we are all mortal, and we have had care. We have cared for our cemeteries well in the past. This is a good generation right now, but we need a plan that. A permanent plan, and that's what I hope to help create, is a permanent plan for our city to fund the care and to maintain the care. We get a lot of help from Mike Hale and the DPW in the last 10 or 15 years. When I first went into First Parish Burial Ground with an electric weed whacker, which meant that I was only limited to how far my extension cords would take me from a neighbor's bathroom window. It was in terrible condition in 2002. It had been cared for in the 80s. So I was coming at it 15 years later, and it was back in horrible condition. And I was in there for most of the summer of 02, 03, 04, 7, and 10. And then we got the attention of the DPW to do major care. But with especially these historic properties for which the city is responsible, it's like an old house. It's consistency or it's gone. It's consistency or you will lose things. So that's what I'd like to see. That's what I'd like to see done. And now I have a way to help create that. So I'm excited about doing that work.
Thank you, Matt. Any further discussion, councilors? Councilor Nolan.
Matt, I'm very happy for this report. And I will be supporting you tonight. I just hope you have enough catch up for your French fries after last night.
Councilor O'Neill.
Hey, Matt. You and I have our differences, but that's okay. I spoke with Sean and he convinced me you're the right man for the job. And listening to you, I was actually at ONA when you spoke there, and listening to you tonight. I believe you're the right man for the job, so welcome.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you. Any further discussion, councilors? Seeing none, roll call vote. Councilor Gross.
Yes.
Grow.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Majota.
Yes.
Memard.
Yes, Matt, the cemeteries welcome you back.
Nolan.
Absolutely. Thank you, Matt.
O'Hara.
Yes.
O'Neill.
Yes.
Worthley.
Yes.
Gilman. Yes. The yeses have it. 9 in favor, 0 opposed. Welcome, Matt. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, councilors.
Next order of business. Oh, and I also would like to mention that Holly Dogwillow is on the call. She's our Director of HR for the city. Welcome, Holly. Next order of business, Madam Clerk.
The next order of business is the consent agenda.
Councilors, would anyone like to pull any matter off the consent agenda? Okay, I would like to remove City Council 2022-034 Worthley to amend GZO Section 5.22 Commercial Land-Based Wind Energy Conversion Facilities.
Second.
So I'm removing that, and so why don't we, I guess we can, so let's hold that right now. Is there anyone else that would like to remove something from the consent agenda? Seeing none, so let's approve the consent agenda with the exception of the order that I just mentioned. Is there a second? I move that we approve the consent agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Council Gross seconded me. Roll call vote. Council Gross.
Yes.
Grow.
Yes.
Majota.
Yes.
Memard.
Yes.
Nolan.
Yes.
O'Hara.
Yes.
O'Neill.
Yes.
Worthley.
Yes.
Gilman. Yes. Consent agenda is approved with the exception of that one order. 9 in favor, 0 opposed. So the issue of why I removed this from the consent agenda is that because this particular order affects the entire city, and given that notice to all abutters in the city and the situation is impracticable, I move that the City Council waive the notice to abutters under GZO Section 1.114, Section B, regarding City Council 2022-034, and that the council is asked to amend the zoning ordinance accordingly to set the public hearing for January 24th, 2023, and to refer the matter to the Planning and Development Committee and the Planning Board. And I so move.
Second.
I think I heard a tie between Grow and Worthley.
Give it
So, so I will give this first one to Worthley. So is there a discussion on this? Does everyone understand what we're doing? Okay, so roll call vote. Gross,
Yes.
Council Grow, Council Majota,
Yes.
Council Memard,
Yes.
Council Nolan,
Yes.
Council O'Hara,
Yes.
Council O'Neill,
yes,
Council Worthley,
Yes, and thank you.
Council Gilman. Yes, yeses have it. 9 in favor, 0 opposed. Thank you. We don't have a unanimous consent agenda tonight, so the next order of business, Madam Clerk.
Is the Budget and Finance Standing Committee report of November 3rd.
Great, and I will turn the meeting, the control of the meeting to Scott Memard, who chairs BNF. So take it away, Councilor Memard.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Budget and Finance Committee has 5 matters for your consideration, or 6, I believe, this evening, and before we go into the public hearing relating to the tax classification rates. So the first item was a memorandum from and a grant application checklist from our police chief requesting acceptance of a 2023 state 911 EMD grant in the amount of $36,915.68, and I so move. Or I'll make the full motion if appropriate, unless anybody has an initial question.
Why don't you continue making the motion?
Yep.
And then,
Absolutely.
Okay,
Thank
go
you.
ahead.
On a motion by Councilor Memhard, seconded by Councilor Worthley, Budget and Finance Committee voted by roll call, 3 in favor, 0 opposed, to recommend that the City Council accept under Mass General Law 4453A a state grant from the Massachusetts Executive Office of Public Safety and Security State 911 Department, a fiscal year 2023 State 911 Department Emergency Medical Dispatch Grant Program in the amount of $36,915.68. And the grant period is from October 18th, 2022 through June 30th, 2023. And there is no local match for this grant. And I so move.
Second. Motion was made by Council Memard, seconded by Council Gilman. Is there a discussion, councilors? Any further narrative, Council Memard?
This is as presented by the chief, this is a repeating annual program that the city benefits from for maintaining its 911 emergency medical dispatch.
Great. Any further discussion, councilors? Seeing none, a roll call vote. Council Gross?
Yes.
Grow?
Yes.
Majota?
Yes.
Memard?
Yes.
Nolan?
Yes.
O'Hara?
Yes.
O'Neill?
yes,
Worthley?
Yes.
Gilman? Yes. Yeses have it. 9 in favor, 0 opposed. Next order of business, Council Memard.
The second budget and finance item is more of the same as what we just voted upon and relates to our acceptance of a fiscal year 2023 state 911 support and incentive grant in the amount of $102,983. And I'll proceed with the motion.
Thank you.
On a motion by myself, seconded by Councilor Gross, the Budget and Finance Committee voted roll call 3 in favor, 0 opposed, to recommend the City Council accept under Mass General Law 4453A, a state grant from the Massachusetts Executive Office of Public Safety and Security, State 911 Department, a fiscal year 2023 State 911 Department Support and Incentive Grant Program in the amount of $102,983. The grant period for this grant is from October 18th, 2022 through June 30th, 2023. And there is no local match for this grant. And I so move.
Second.
Motion made by Council Memard, seconded by Council Worthley. Is there discussion? Council Worthley.
I just want to add to this that I think it's really commendable that our police chief, our fire chief, all our city managers are keeping an eye out for grants that reduce the burden to taxpayers to try to provide these services. And they really should, I mean, they get paid, they get credit, but I think it's always good for us to recognize that. So I'm pleased to support this.
Thank you, Council. Any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote. Council Gross?
Yes.
Grow?
Yes.
Majota?
Yes.
Memard?
Yes.
Nolan?
Yes.
O'Hara?
Yes.
O'Neill?
yes,
Worthley?
Yes.
Gilman, yes. Yeses have it. 9 in favor, 0 opposed. Please continue, Counselor Memard.
Our third item from Budget and Finance this evening is a memorandum from our fire chief and his SBT 2023 number 7 in the amount of $3,720. And I made the committee, I made a motion, seconded by Councilor Worthley, for the Budget and Finance Committee and we voted by roll call, 3 in favor, 0 opposed, to recommend that the City Council approve a special budgetary transfer 2023 SBT 7 in the amount of $3,075.20 from fire purchase of services account number as noted to the police uniform overtime account number as noted. And this is for the purpose of background investigations conducted by the police department for the fire department. And I so move.
Second.
Motion made by Counselor Memard, second by Counselor Worthley. Is there a discussion? Seeing none, a roll call vote. Counselor Gross,
Yes.
Counselor Grow,
Yes.
Counselor Majota,
Yes.
Counselor Memard,
Yes.
Counselor Nolan,
Yes.
Counselor O'Hara,
Yes.
Counselor O'Neill,
yes,
Counselor Worthley,
Yes.
Counselor Gilman. Yes, the yeses have it. 9 in favor, 0 opposed. Next order of business.
Item number 4 on the Budget and Finance agenda is a memorandum from the EMS coordinator relating to ambulance billing and our collection services contract. And committee recommendation on a motion by myself, seconded by Councilor Worthley. Budget and Finance Committee voted by roll call, 3 in favor, 0 opposed, to recommend that the City Council authorize the Gloucester Fire Department to seek a contract term for a 6-year cycle for the singular purpose of a contract for the Gloucester Fire Department ambulance billing service and collections, billing and collection services, and I so move.
Second.
Motion made by Counselor Memard, seconded by Counselor Worthley. Is there a discussion? Counselor Grow.
I just have a quick question. Is it typical to have a 6-year contract? Is there something special about that number in this particular case?
John Dunn or Kenny, would either of you like to speak to this, or our CAO, Jill Cahill?
Yeah, I will. Excuse me. So generally, yeah, these contracts are very complicated. There's a lot of data that goes on in the background. So making sure that we're supported by a particular vendor basically puts us in a position where we need to kind of have that vendor in place for a number of years.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any
You're welcome.
further discussion, counselors? Counselor O'Neill.
yes. Is there an amount attached to this 6-year contract?
The cost of the contract is
If
not
I may,
before us. Kenny?
I was just, there is no cost. They're going out to bid, so we don't know the cost yet. We haven't entered the contract yet. So Mass General Law, Chapter 30B only allows a 3-year. So with the approval of the City Council, we're able to extend that to a 6-year. And typically with the 6-year contract, typically when we go out to bid, there could be favorable, prices by going with the 6 years. So there is no cost yet. We haven't actually sent out the RFP yet for the bid.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none. Roll call vote. Counselor Gross,
Yes.
Counselor Grow,
Yes.
Counselor Majota,
Yes.
Counselor Memard,
Yes.
Counselor Nolan,
Yes.
Counselor O'Hara,
Yes.
O'Neill,
Yes,
Worthley,
Yes.
Gilman. Yes, the yeses have it. 9 in favor, 0 opposed. Thank you. Next order of business, Counselor Memard.
Yeah, the next item relates to funding of contract negotiations in some of our departments, police, and relates to a memorandum from our CFO and 2 SBTs, SBT 2023-5 in the amount of $10,925.71, and 2023 SBT 6 in the amount of $39,520, $570.20, excuse me. I'll read each motion separately. We took them up separately. The first, on a motion by myself, seconded by Councilor Worthley, Budget and Finance voted by roll call, 3 in favor, 0 opposed, to recommend City Council approve special budgetary transfer 2023 SBT 5 in the amount of $10,925.71 from the Executive City Mayor Contingency Emergency Account Fund, as noted, to the Police Criminal Investigations Salaries Account number, as noted, for the purpose to cover the retroactive pay for the superior officers for fiscal year 2023. And I so move.
Second.
Motion made by Councilor Memard and seconded by Councilor Gross. Is there a discussion?
Just by background, when we accepted the budget, the mayor's office anticipated this cost and had the reserve in the mayor's budget for this purpose. So this is what was intended back when the budget was approved.
Thank you. Any further discussion, councilors? Seeing none, a roll call vote. Councilor Gross,
Yes.
Grow,
Yes.
Marjota,
Yes.
Memard,
Yes.
Nolan,
Absolutely.
O'Hara,
Yes.
O'Neill,
yes,
Worthley,
Yes.
Gilman. Yes, the yeses have it. 9 in favor, 0 opposed. Thank you. Final motion, Councilor. Oh, no, second to last motion.
Almost final.
Go ahead, Councilor Memard.
A committee recommendation on a motion by Councilor Memhard, seconded by Councilor Gross. Budget and Finance voted unanimously by roll call to recommend that the City Council approve special budgetary transfer SBT 6 for 2023 in the amount of $39,570.20 from the Executive City Mayor Contingency Emergency Account number, as noted. And this is to the Police Uniform Salary Account number, as noted, for the purpose of covering the retroactive pay for superior officers for this fiscal year 2023. And I so move.
Second.
Motion made by Councilor Memard, seconded by Councilor Gross. Is there a discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote. Councilor Gross,
Yes.
Councilor Grow.
Yep.
Councilor Majota,
Yes.
Councilor Memard,
Yes.
Councilor Nolan,
Yes.
Councilor O'Hara,
Yes.
Councilor O'Neill,
yes,
Councilor Worthley,
Yes.
Councilor Gilman. Yes, the yeses have it. 9 in favor, 0 opposed. Final order of business for BNF, Councilor Memard.
Yes, we're done moving money around, and now we're accepting some donations. And Budget and Finance, on a motion by myself, seconded by Councilor Worthley, voted roll call, 3 in favor, 0 opposed, to recommend the City Council accept various cash donations under Mass General Law 4453A to support the Cape Ann Veteran Services in the amount of $2,200 from the following members and business partners within our community. And these are Ed Camo, Pratty CAV, Cynthia and Edwin Joyce. And it's for a total amount of $2,200. And I so move.
Second.
Motion made by Councilor Memard, seconded by Councilor Worthley. Is there a discussion?
Other than thank you to Adam, no.
Okay, thank you, councilors. Roll call vote. Councilor Gross,
Yes.
Grow,
Yes.
Majota,
Yes.
Memard,
Yes.
Nolan,
Yes.
O'Hara,
Yes.
O'Neill,
yes,
Worthley,
Yes.
Gilman. Yes, 9 in favor, 0 opposed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next order of business, Madam Clerk.
Is the Ordinance and Administration Standing Committee report of October 31st.
Great. I'll turn control of the meeting over to Councilor Nolan, our O&A chair. Councilor, you are muted.
We have a memorandum from our CAEL regarding the 2022 pilot surf program at Good Harbor Beach. So Jill, if you'd like to take the floor.
Jill Cahill, our CAO.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. So we did a debrief at the end of, hold on. At the end, sorry, it's cold in my house. At the end of the summer on all of some of the summer initiatives. The SURF one was one of them. And the feedback is very positive all the way around. From talking to Joe Lucido, who, pretty much runs the beaches. We did not have one incident reported. They got the surfers and the lifeguards did really well together. And I think it was a great success. So we hope you'll adopt it.
Excellent. Thank you, Jill Cahill. As far as I know, on the council, we have 0 reports of complaints. There was some adage of some information to the report for the request, but I haven't heard of any problems this year. The lifeguards were happy. Courtney has done a great job with the Surfers Union, and I think we're done with the training wheels and we're ready to put this in full motion for ordinance that we can revisit at any given time, but I don't think we need a sunset clause. And unless there's any other comments, I'd like to move on to the actual motion.
Great. Go ahead, Councilor Nolan. Thank you.
So on a motion by Councilor O'Hara, seconded by Councilor Worthley, the Ordinance Administration Committee voted by roll call 3 in favor, 0 opposed to recommend that the City Council amend the beach and Stage 4 park regulations as follows. Number 3, miscellaneous restrictions. H, boat launching and surfing. Boat launching and landing are prohibited at all public beaches between the hours of 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. from Memorial Day to Labor Day without the permission of the lifeguard. Surfing is prohibited at all public beaches between the hours of 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. from striking Memorial June 17th to Labor Day 17th, then to add Labor Day without the permission of lifeguards, except at Good Harbor Beach. Strike for 1 year 2022 season pilot season program Good That Be Shall, and strike and extend in the surfing season allow day surfing through Friday, June 17th. And then will extend surfing hours, allowing surfing until 10 a.m. from strike Monday, June 17th through Labor Day, weekdays, non-holidays only, and surfing on bad weather days, allowing surfing on bad weather days with few to no swimmers in the water at lifeguards' discretion. Lifeguards can call surfers out of the water anytime for any reason, and I so move.
Second.
Motion was made by Councilor Nolan, and I think it was Councilor Majota. Yes?
Grow.
Oh,
No.
Councilor Grow?
Okay.
Okay.
It was Councilor Grow.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry. So is there a discussion, councilors? Councilor Grow, and then Councilor Memard.
I'm gonna do what I cringe at a lot, and that is to pass out all the accolades. First off, I wanted to thank Councilor Memhard, who actually I seem to have gotten a lot more attention on this for some unknown reasons. I had very little to do with it. Scott did the lion's share of working with the Cape Ann Surfers Union and Courtney Hayes and that group. There was a lot of reticence, I think, on the part of the DPW, and I want to thank the administration, Jill and the mayor, and the folks at the DPW for giving this a shot and giving it a fair shake. I want to thank the lifeguards for putting up with being on the front line of dealing with this. It was really the surfers' thing to lose and fail, and I'm really proud of the entire community for responding positively and doing what is I think a really good thing for the surf community and for the beach community in general. I really appreciate all the lifeguards for everything that they do, and also the administration for giving and empowering them to do their job. I hope this continues to be a great success. It's just been a real positive thing, and it's the kind of thing that happens when you have persistent input from members of the community who just don't want to hear the word no. So thanks to, again, Courtney Hayes and all the folks at the Cape Ann Surfers Union. And I think it's a pretty awesome thing.
Thank you, Council Grow. Council Memard, your hand was raised.
Yes, thank you. And Councilor Grow covered it as usual very thoroughly. Only I think 4 of us are present who were in City Hall, Kairos Auditorium, when the surfing group first presented their request to the City Council for a modification of our restrictions for surfing conditions at Good Harbor. That was just before COVID struck. And they did a slap down presentation that was very impressive and had an enormous amount of enthusiasm. And it's taken a few years with a couple of obstacles along the way, but I too am very appreciative of the willingness of the administration and our DPW and the lifeguards to work with the members of the Cape Ann Surfers Union and their representative Courtney Hayes, who is a very strong and articulate advocate and worked hard to make this make sense for us here in Gloucester. So I will be supporting this, and I'm thrilled it's moving forward.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor O'Neill.
Yep, as a mom and a former lifeguard, I was initially against this. I saw disaster, so I'm glad that didn't happen, and I'll be supporting this.
Thank you, Councilor. Anyone else like to discuss this? Seeing none, Councilor Nolan, I do have a question on the motion on the first, under H1. I think it is meant to be boat launching and surfing are prohibited and not in landing.
No.
In the
Landing.
ordinance, it actually says boats launching and landing.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, so that's just read the ordinance. What we did is to change it to allow the surfing with the lifeguards in short view,
Okay.
and the instead of the dates and time, the day and name, we gave a date, and then we also added that at all times the lifeguards can ask it to
Okay.
stop. And the only beach that we included was Good Harbor Beach and excluded all the rest of them.
Okay, that makes sense. So, so what we're basically saying is that a surfboard is a boat, and this is all about them landing, coming up on the shore, correct?
I think we're saying that the surfboard is not a boat, and surfboarding is allowed, not a boat.
Boat launching and landing
That's a regular,
without the permission of the lifeguard.
yeah. But
Mm.
if you want to add to the boat launching and landing surfboards only, to take away the landing, that's something we can add, but I think it's implied in the rest of this that it could be controlled by the lifeguards. And
Can I
I
ask
can
a question?
refer that to,
Okay, I guess I'm just, I'm a little bit confused with that, just because, but I'll let someone else interject. So, Councilor
Tony has his hand up.
has not spoken
Yeah.
yet. So
You have to have landing because you can't land boats on the beaches.
I understand that.
That's, the landing has to stay and it needs to be just where it is, as it is.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Anyone else like to speak on this? Seeing none, I think we have a motion. We have a second, if I'm not mistaken, and so we'll do a roll call. Council Gross,
Yes.
Council Grow,
Yes.
Council Majota,
Yeah. Yes.
Council Memard,
Yes.
Council Nolan,
yes, thank you.
Council O'Hara,
Yes.
Council O'Neill,
Yes,
Council Worthley, Council Worthley,
You muted, Jeff.
Yes, sorry about the mute.
and Council Gilman. Yes, the yeses have it. 9 in favor, 0 opposed. Thank you so much, Council Nolan. Appreciate it. Next order of business, Madam Clerk.
Is the Planning and Development Standing Committee report of November 2nd.
Council Grow.
We don't have any items for the council consideration, but I just want to take this opportunity to point out or announce that we will not be having a regularly scheduled P&D meeting next week on the 16th, as there are no agenda items that will need to be taken up that day. So the next meeting we will have would be December 7th, I believe.
Great. Thank you, Counselor. Next order of business, Madam Clerk.
Is public hearing 2022-030 tax classification in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 5, and Gloucester Code of Ordinances, Chapter 2, Section 2-26, to determine the percentage of the local tax levy for the fiscal year 2023 to be borne by each class of real and personal property.
Thank you. I'd like to open the public hearing and ask for a report from City Administration. And Nancy, would you just take a moment to introduce your team, just so we have 16 members of the public? It would be great if you could introduce them. Thank you.
Okay, I'm Nancy Pappas. I'm the principal assessor. And with me tonight are Gary Johnstone, assessor, and Tim Good, the other assessor. We make up the board, the three of us.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. And I'm happy to provide some information if that's what you would like, Council President, before the start of the hearing.
That would be great. Thank you.
So to start this process, the fiscal 23 assessed values and new growth must be approved. That did occur, and they were approved by the Department of Revenue on October 18th. This allows us to move forward with the tax classification process. And there are 4 options to consider, none of which change the total tax levy. As there are no parcels classified as open space, and the mayor has not chosen to adopt either the residential exemption or the small commercial exemption, the focus is on determining whether or not to shift a portion of the tax levy from one class of property to another. To do so, a residential factor must be adopted, and this factor determines the share of the tax levy that each class of property will bear. I will share my screen if you bear with me for just a minute.
Thank you.
Okay, so starting on page 4 of the packet, you will see total value and percentage of each class. The residential class makes up 91.29%, and commercial, industrial, and personal property 8.71%. The taxable value of the city increased just above 16% from fiscal 22. And based on the sales analysis, the residential class as a whole increased close to 16%. Within the residential class, single families saw an increase of close to 16%, condominiums close to 11%, 2 and 3 families approximately 19.5%, and apartments approximately 21%. The commercial class as a whole increased approximately 9.5%, and the industrial class saw market adjustments of roughly 7.5%, and that's an increase as well. So more significant increases in terms of market adjustments on the residential side based on the sales analysis. Page 5 shows the parcel counts and assessed values of each class from 2010 to the present. Page 6 shows the historic shift factors that have been adopted over the years, and it's the underlying residential factor that is being voted on. Last year's shift of 1.03 equated to a 0.9969 residential factor. Page 7 shows the calculation of the maximum allowable levy. It starts with the fiscal 22 levy limit, which is reduced slightly by amended fiscal 22 growth. Added to that is the Prop 2.5 increase, residential, commercial, industrial, and personal property new growth, which results in the fiscal 2023 levy limit. And added to that is the CSO debt exclusion, water debt exclusion, and the East Gloucester and Veterans Elementary School debt exclusion. That results in the fiscal 23 maximum allowable levy, and that number divided by the total value of all parcels results in a tax rate at a factor of 1 this year of 10.62. A factor of 1 would result in the same tax rate for all properties. Any factor other than 1 would shift a portion of the levy from one class of property to another. Page 8 shows the approximate tax rates that result from the various shifts to the commercial, industrial, and personal property class. The maximum shift allowed by the state is 1.5, which is illustrated at the bottom of the page. Page 9 shows a comparison of levies by class at various shift factors. The tax rates on this page are approximate and rounded so as not to exceed the maximum allowable levy, which is at the top of the page. And the far column on the right shows the difference in the levy that each class would bring in after the shift. Page 10 shows changes in tax dollars for properties valued at different levels at various shifts. It shows the savings to the residential parcels and the increase in tax dollars to the commercial, industrial, and personal property taxpayers. For fiscal 23, the average single family home value is just under 800,000. The median single family home is valued at 583,600. And this page basically does isolate what the shift is doing. So if you look at a $500,000 property value at a factor of 1 with the same tax rate for all properties, the taxpayer would pay $5,310. And at a shift of 1.03, there would be a savings on an annual basis to the residential taxpayer of $15, while the commercial, industrial, and personal property taxpayer would pay an additional $160 on an annual basis. The maximum shift of 1.5 at the bottom of the page would result in a savings to residential taxpayers of $255, while the commercial, industrial, and personal property taxpayer would pay an additional $2,655. The remainder of the packet explains the open space discount and the residential and small commercial exemptions, which are not viable options this year. As we indicated earlier, I do have Gary Johnstone and Tim Good here. And if you have any questions, we will do our best to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you so much. For now, I think we can remove the screen share and be prepared to put it back up, Nancy, as we always have in the past year. So
Thank you.
thank you. Anyone else like to speak in favor of this? Seeing none, is there?
Can
Go
I-
ahead. Nancy?
Can I just make one comment? When I provide the information to the council, I'm not necessarily speaking in favor or opposed, just providing the facts so that you can make an informed decision.
Okay, great. So the public hearing is continuing. Council Grow, do you have, this really is this is the time that we are hearing from the public.
I understand that. You're asking whether or not we have people speaking in favor or opposition to what? What are they speaking in favor or opposition to? We don't have that on the table.
Well, the public hearing is open for the applicant to speak right now. Madam Clerk, do you have a suggestion? Because typically we open the public hearing at the beginning of the conversation. Do do we pause right now and make the motion coming out of subcommittee? Because typically we don't do that until after the public hearing.
No, what we usually do is the subject is the tax classification, and the constituents can, excuse me, can give their opinion and whether they're in favor or in opposition of, changing the tax classification and what their reasons are. We usually don't put the motion on the floor. That's always been past practice.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. It's a good question, however. So who else would like to speak in either in favor or opposition? I see Ken Reel from the Chamber of Commerce. Madam Clerk, would you bring Mr. Reel in? If you would introduce yourself, Ken, and your address, and you have up to 3 minutes to speak to us. Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you all. Ken Reel, CEO, Greater Cape Ann Chamber of Commerce, 24 Harbor Loop. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Great. Thank you. Good evening, President Gilman and councilors. Thanks again for hosting this public forum on this important city matter. As you all know, every year the Greater Cape Ann Chamber of Commerce, as the largest business organization on the North Shore, advocates for parity between the residential and the CIP tax rates, and that we are in full support of the Budget and Finance Committee's recommendation of such. Taking into account the different evaluation adjustments to the residential property that Nancy has just explained, the CIP share of tax revenue continues its downward slide over the past 9 years, now at a near historic low of 8.7%, down almost 50% from 30 years ago. While we fully understand a main reason for this is due to the increasing valuation on the residential properties, this still does not bode well for our businesses, as we are not seeing strong commercial growth. Let me set the stage with a few facts. Gloucester's CIP factor of 1.03 stands as about the lowest differential rate in the Commonwealth. Its effect is small on individual homeowners, about now the equivalent of a few cups of coffee for the $500,000 property owner, but is much more than 10 times that for an equivalent business owner. Most Massachusetts communities do not have a higher business tax, including our neighbors of Essex, Manchester, Rockport, and Ipswich, and Newburyport. And those neighboring communities that do have a higher CIP, like Beverly and Peabody and Salem, have a significantly higher business base. The ever-increasing median property value is indicative of Gloucester becoming more of a bedroom and second home community. Single income and young families cannot afford to stay or relocate here, which will ultimately impact all aspects of our community, including declining school enrollment. We must provide for a robust business base and affordable housing for our next generation. And while our region has certainly emerged strong from the pandemic, it is not over. And most businesses continue to be impacted in some way as we continue to work through this historically challenging time in our nation's history. The two main remaining challenges are significant worker shortages and supply chain disruptions. And of course, we have inflation now at records at levels we haven't seen in many years. Many hospitality businesses, especially restaurants, have not been operating at full capacity despite robust demand. And most support services and manufacturing and production businesses continue to seek new employees at all organizational levels. And yet, funds from the city's local options rooms tax have almost quadrupled over the past decade, from about 500,000 to almost 2 million. And restaurants contribute another 1 million. That's almost $3 million in revenue from just the local options tax on our restaurants and accommodations, which are both struggling right now with higher prices and a shortage of workers. We've heard the numbers before, and yes, while our CIP rate differential is lower than some of our neighboring larger communities, our business base is also much smaller and continues to be in decline as we're challenged by the impact of fishing industry restrictions. Further, we live on an island with high housing and utility costs, and from a financial and workforce perspective, it is much less expensive for businesses to operate elsewhere in the state. We need to do everything we can to encourage businesses to locate and grow here, and having tax parity for businesses is an attractive selling point. As you consider this important factor impacting the future of our region, I ask that you reflect on the last 2.5 years of this historically challenging time and support our businesses as they support all our residents with good jobs, products, and services. We are in support of the Budget and Finance Committee's recommendation to leave the rate at parity in recognition of the extreme hardships experienced by our Gloucester business community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. And Ken, I allowed you to carry on for quite a bit longer than 3 minutes in fairness to being fair to people speaking in favor or in opposition. So thank you.
Thank you.
Who else would like to speak in favor or in opposition or in general about tax classification? I see Steve Aiello. Steve, would you introduce yourself and your address? And you have up to 3 minutes to speak to us.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay, good. Steve Aiello, 22 Linden Road, Gloucester. I'm speaking in favor of a tax classification, actually a little bit higher than the current 1.03. I was talking with a woman this morning in one of the grocery stores. She saw one of my social media posts about the meeting tonight, and she thanked me for standing up for the homeowners. She's a woman probably in her 80s. She's a widow, and she lives alone in her house. And she tells me she gets about $800 a month in Social Security. And 50% of that goes towards her taxes. And then she said she didn't even want to tell me how much she pays for water and sewer. Luckily, she only lives alone. And she's concerned that about, what the electricity and oil price increases are going to have. She said that, she was thankful for things like Open Door and Cater because she can get around and, rather cheaply and get some food from Open Door and whatever else. But I got thinking about my neighbors that are in the same situation, that are looking at increases in their taxes if the shift is from 1.3 to 1.0. And I started thinking about when the tax classification was set at 1.25. Wasn't that long ago. And over the years, what we've done is consistently lowered it from 1.25 to the point where it is right now, 1.03. And I said to myself, what is a business like? How much money does a business like Market Basket save by being in business in Gloucester compared to, say, a community like Tewksbury, where the tax rate is $27.25 on commercial, or say Salem, where it's $26.31 on commercial, or say Saugus, where it's $24.87 on commercial, or Lawrence, where it's $24.21 on commercial. Beverly, $23.90 on commercial. Most of our blue collar neighbors have tax rates that are actually 100% higher than the commercial industrial tax rates in Gloucester. And you know what? They're having the same significant worker shortage, inflation, and other issues that the businesses in Gloucester that are facing. But the difference is that our real estate valuations for homeowners are growing at a higher rate than they are in those other communities. And when you look at Gloucester's per capita income, our per capita income is much lower than those other blue collar communities. So what I suggest to the city council is a gradual increase from 1.03, maybe up to 1.05, maybe up to 1.10, something that'll get the commercial tax rate up to around $15 per thousand, something that will give the homeowners some real savings. And that's about all I have to say on this. I don't like, when some of the councilors say, well, the homeowner's only going to save, or it's only going to cost the homeowners $15 per thousand, or whatever it is the increase would be. Go back to 2005 to today and see how much we've shifted onto the backs of the homeowners. It's time to give the homeowners a break. When you look at the abandoned properties around town, you don't see the commercial industrial properties abandoned. You see residential properties in foreclosure. It's time to give the homeowners a break. For the last 5-6 years, the White House has been given business and industrial properties a break. It's time to give the homeowners a break. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak in favor or in opposition? Adam Bartkey, Madam Clerk?
I am a non-resident of Gloucester, but I work at Gorton's. Do I have the ability to speak?
Adam, unfortunately, our rules of procedure say no. Unless there's, if anyone wants to make an exception to the rules of procedure, is there anyone that would like to do that? Council Worthley, do you have a motion on that?
I'd like to make exception to our procedure and allowing residents only to speak, whereas Gorton's is the largest employer in the city of Gloucester. I don't know what Adam's going to say, but I think that's a fair thing to do.
Councilors, is there a second to Council Worthley? Are you making a motion then, Council Worthley?
I did, yes.
Okay. Is there a second to Council Worthley's motion?
Second.
Council O'Hara's got a second. Discussion, councilors?
Point of
Councilor
order.
Go ahead, Council Nolan.
On the motion, let someone speak. We have a rule that on all public hearings, they have to be a resident of Gloucester. The fact that someone works for a business but does not own the business or is not someone that is represented by the business with knowledge from corporate, I would say that this should be excluded from the public hearing.
Okay, anyone else like to speak in this discussion?
Point of order. I don't think that this is a motionable item since it's a rule. It would be a required consent.
I thought we can make a, this was a motion to modify our rules of procedure.
Okay.
I would like to hear what Mr. Bartkey has to say.
Okay, anyone
We
else
all
like
know
to
he's-
speak? Anyone else like to speak on this this motion to suspend our rules of procedure?
I think it's a bad,
Go ahead, Council Gross, you have the floor.
I think it's a very, very dangerous precedent to be setting.
Okay, Council Nolan, your hand is up.
I feel the same way as Tony. We've done this in the past where we haven't allowed people to speak. And like I said, he works for Gorton's, which is great. Gorton's is a wonderful corporation, but he can't speak for Gorton's unless they tell us he can. And he's not a citizen of Gloucester. And I think that will open the door for a lot of problems that may come up at oral communication, at anything else that follows the same rule that if you're not a resident, you can't speak of these few items. So I'm sorry that I have to put my foot down on this, but I really do think this is something that's going to be very bad for us in the future and or now to listen to. So I'm adamantly against this.
Anyone else that has not spoken on this motion? Council Majota.
Yes, I would have to agree with Councilor Nolan and Councilor Gross. I think that in the past, people who wanted to speak that don't live in the city were unable to. And I think that we just need to follow the rules and procedure. And you do have to be a resident of Gloucester. I think we've had this discussion before and we voted on with the rules and procedures, and I think we just have to follow them. So I'm agreeing with Council Nolan and Gross.
Okay, anyone else that has not spoke on this motion?
I haven't spoken.
Okay, Council Worthley.
Yes, I think we have a tremendous misunderstanding of our own rules of procedure. The rules of procedure, as I recall, was on oral communications being limited only to people who live in Gloucester. But almost every meeting, we have a representative from National Grid that may not be living in Gloucester. We have attorneys who represent applicants who don't live in Gloucester. We have potential applicants who come before us, potential residents who come before us when they're building something, and we listen to them at public hearings. I think the idea was simply on oral communications and the ability of a resident to speak to the council and address the mayor's office. But on a public hearing, I cannot imagine. I remember Dave Gendel used to be National Grid representative. He didn't live in Gloucester. I think he's before us every 2 weeks on poll petitions. So the idea that we're going to limit one of the top employers' representatives from speaking to the city council, I think it's insulting, frankly.
Point of, I'm sorry, Mr. Council Worthy, I am not trying to insult anyone, and I take that very offensively. I think we're just following the rules of procedure. And to say that, to word it that way excuse me, I'm speaking, Council Worthy. I didn't interrupt you.
Go ahead, Councilman Majot, do you have the floor?
Thank you. I think that we're just following the rules, and the rules state that you have to be a resident. I don't know this individual. I respect him. He works hard, but the rules and procedures state that you have to be a Gloucester resident. That's it.
Understood. No offense meant. Apologize.
So I'm on the rules of procedure, and I just want to make sure that we're absolutely clear on what we're discussing right now.
Why don't I make this easy for everyone involved and I withdraw my request to speak?
So I appreciate that. I'm just making sure that this isn't clearly covered in the public hearing portion. I don't see it in the public hearing portion. I do know that it's in the public comment portion for residents only. Madam Clerk, can you clarify that with me, please? I'm trying to be very fair and diplomatic here.
I'm looking at the public hearing procedure and it doesn't say anything about a resident. It is in the oral communications that you have to be a resident. It does not specifically say anything in the public hearing section. It just says that any opponent, anything for or against, they have 3 minutes to speak.
Okay, thank you. So Council Grow, your hands up.
I was going to couple things. One, a clarification that when we have representatives from National Grid or applicants who are putting forward for a petition or a permit, or even a representative, the CEO of Gorton's was here to speak on their behalf, they would have standing in a way that someone else would not necessarily have. But maybe in this particular situation, we take this as an indication that we revisit our rules of procedure. And if we feel like we need to put that specifically in the language so that moving forward, there's no ambiguity to that. I don't particularly care one way or the other. If Mr. Bart, we don't have a lot of people speaking tonight, but I do understand Councilor Nolan's and Councilor Gross's concern about opening this up to what has happened in a lot of communities, which is sort of bombarding public comment and public hearings by groups that have no relationship to the community whatsoever. Obviously not Mr. Bartkey's situation here, but that has happened, and there is concern for allowing organizations outside the community to come in and dominate public meetings in a way that is not intended. But I think maybe we should have a revisit on what our rules of procedure are for public hearings and make that a little bit more clear.
So I am going to support making an exception to our rule of procedure only because it's not written right now in our public hearing process. And I clearly, I didn't recall that. I think our emphasis in the past has been on public comments when we had a long conversation. And going forward, if we want to amend our governance, we can go back and do that. But for the purpose of tonight, I will be supporting allowing Mr. Bartkey to speak. Anyone else like to speak in favor or opposition before we do a roll call? Councilor Memard.
Yes, thank you. Again, I think it's important. The gentleman introduced himself as an employee of Gorton's. So he's coming into our community. He values the relationship that he has with his employer. It could be a short term or it could be a 30-year relationship. But I think that he does have standing in that capacity. He relies on our economy for his livelihood. So I would welcome hearing from him. I think he has standing. Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak before we do a roll call? Go ahead, Councilor O'Neill and Councilor O'Hara.
Yes, I'm definitely in favor of Mr. Bartkey speaking. Hope I'm saying your name right. And I believe that in the rules of procedure, it's allowed by omission. Does that make sense? Because it wasn't explicitly written that no one can speak who's not a resident of Gloucester. It was explicitly written in oral communications. It was purposely left out of public hearings. Maybe not purposely, but definitely left out. So
Right.
I'm definitely in favor of this man speaking.
Okay,
And
thank you.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor O'Neill. Councilor O'Hara.
Yes, I'm in favor of having the gentleman speak. I think it's important. He not saying that he represents Gorton's, but the mere fact that he's here tonight, he claims he works at Gorton's. I think hearing from him and his thoughts are very important. So I'll be supporting this gentleman being able to speak. Thank you.
Okay, great. So is anyone, go ahead, Councilor Gross, and then we'll, let's move the question. Go ahead.
Yes, considering that we did not explicitly put it, and I was looking it up myself while you were looking it up. In the rules of procedure, I do think we do need to address that. Unfortunately, one of the byproducts of our availability to the general public is brought in what used to be called outside agitators, and they are now at a superpower level due to Zoom. And I think that we need to be sensitive to that and not allow our processes and our legislative work be derailed through that apparatus. And I think we govern for the citizens of Gloucester. And I think that that's who we owe our allegiance to. I will remove any objection I have to Mr. Bartkey speaking. The point that outside companies that come before our boards have people who are speaking for them, that are representing them and have been sanctioned by them. And I think that's very important to remember, because Gorton's may not appreciate what Mr. Bartkey said, and we're attributing that to him. Now, they may love everything he says, but we have to be very careful not to have Gorton's carry the baggage of an employee that may not be in their same view of the world. So I think that that's something we need to be sensitive also, although I assume that Mr. Bartkey is not going to do that, and no offense intended, but we have to be aware that those things can happen.
Councilor Nolan.
I'm still in line with Tony. I don't like the idea of someone coming on as an employee of a business that doesn't live here. It's unfair to Gorton's, whether he says something that may be good or bad. If you're going to let him in our rules of procedure, obviously will apply that anybody can speak. We do have to look into this because the topic of conversation is people interrupting meetings and having a say in our local guide. But I would appreciate if good or bad, he doesn't put himself in a word using Gorton's to get his way in the door, and just a person that wants to speak. I can understand that, but I don't want to use the influence of one of our best commercial guests in the city to put up something that maybe they don't recognize or like. So if we could leave the word Gorton's out of this and listen to what his take is, then I'm all for it.
Okay, so I'd like to move the question, if that's okay, Councilor Worthley. I think we've now spent about 20 minutes on this conversation.
we don't need to take a vote. Council, there's no rule in place that forbids him. The council president can interpret the rule as she likes. What are we voting on? Allowing an exception to something that doesn't even exist as a rule?
So the motion on the floor, if I'm not mistaken, is that we suspend our rules of procedure
There's no
and
rule on this.
we allow this individual to speak, and that was seconded. And I'd like to rule on that because that was
Point of order.
Go ahead, Council Grow. What is your point?
The point is, I believe Council Worthley is correct. If there is no rule to be suspended, then there's no motion, there's no legitimacy to the motion to suspend the rules to allow this person to speak. And God, I hope it's good.
So then are you saying we are just free to allow him to speak right now? Is that what you're saying?
You're free to make the judgment, yes.
Okay, because we made the motion thinking that there was wording in the public hearing. And we've since learned that that is not the case. So Mr. Bartkay, without objection, councilors, we'd like to allow you to speak for up to 3 minutes. Would you introduce yourself again? And you have the floor for 3 minutes. Thank you for your patience.
I certainly appreciate the conversation. You guys are doing a very important job and you're taking it seriously, which is absolutely what you should be doing. So I've worked at Gorton's for 15 years. I am the controller here. Kurt Hogan, the CEO, has asked me to represent Gorton's here tonight. And Gorton's is proud to have worked in Gloucester and been operating business in Gloucester now for over 170 years. And we want to have fairness in the tax structure to allow us to continue to be a pillar of this community. And anything that can allow for sustained business success in an environment where we're seeing inflationary costs and we are all feeling it, both businesses and individuals, is certainly appreciated. We appreciate all the community support we receive. We take pride in the fact that we are one of the largest employers in the area, and that is something that we hope we will continue to do with continued business success. So I feel like there's a lot of pressure put on me to say something profound, but I appreciate anything the community can do to allow Gorton's to have continued success, hopefully for another 170 years. So I won't take up any more of your time, but certainly appreciate the time that you've been given to me.
Adam, you earned like another minute and a half there. You can keep going.
We appreciate we appreciate your sense of humor. Thank you so much, and much appreciated. Who else would like to speak in public comments? We have Beverly Palmici. Beverly, would you introduce yourself and your address and tell us?
Beverly Palmici, 8 Commonwealth Avenue. I'd just like to say that I very much agreed with what Steve Aiello had to say. I'm a senior citizen, I'm a homeowner, and the taxes do nothing but go up, despite the fact that there's more and more building here, higher and higher prices for the new buildings, very high prices for the condominiums, and yet our taxes never go down, the taxes go up. Now, I have a 2-family house. I try everything I can to keep that rent low and do it for years, but I get forced. I'm forced each time, and I'm still below market rate. But you can't keep rental prices low if your taxes go up. And maybe I'm just not sophisticated enough to understand tax rates, but there just seems to be something very odd about the fact that so many new units have been added. It seems like any street you drive down anywhere near the water, there's condominiums, and none of them are low priced. So I don't understand why that addition to our tax base is not keeping our taxes lower. So something is off. I'm no expert. I can't say what it is, but all I know is my taxes go up. And if my property is valued to be some exorbitant price, I have no control over that. And I have to pay that higher rate. I'm not selling my house, I'm living in it. So, and when you're living off a limited income, it's difficult. So I just agree with what Steve Aiello had to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Beverly. Anyone else like to speak in favor or in opposition? Seeing none, is there any correspondence, Madam Clerk?
As required in the notice of the public hearing, that was the legal notice, all written communication had to be received by me 3 days prior to the public hearing, and I did not receive any communications.
And I think some counselors, we've all received emails in the last day or two that we have personally read, but they're not part of the communications on that correspondence. Counselors, do you have any questions before we close the public hearing to ask of any member of the assessor's office or our auditor or our CFO? Counsel Worthley, your hand was up first for a question.
Thank you. I have a number of questions. I'll be as efficient as I can here.
Let's ask one question and then we're going to share the floor. Thank you.
Okay. So my first question, and until other councilors speak, is to our assessor, Nancy Pappas. Nancy, on page 7 of your report, there's a list of certain numbers, and one of them was the new growth for the commercial industrial properties. And I saw that number is $279,000. Is that, again, it went by a little quickly. I know we have it in our package, but I don't have it in front of me. Was that the number that is that number accurate? $279,000.
That number is the new growth that was approved, but it is for commercial, industrial, and personal property combined.
Personal is residential. Personal is a boat or equipment.
Personal is combined with commercial and industrial for the purposes of tax classification.
So can you help me understand, new growth for $279,000 of value means mostly a new building or an improved building or something like that?
This is tax dollars that is added to the levy in this case. It is an increase in assessed value multiplied by last year's tax rate, and that results in these tax dollars of new growth that are able to be added to the levy.
Okay.
Growth is typically new construction. It can be condominium conversions. It could be new articles of personal property, or if properties become were once exempt and become taxable. So it's a change in status that we are allowed to take this, and that gets approved by the Department of Revenue each year.
Thank you. And is that a typical number from year to year? Sorry, I don't have that number handy, but $279,000 in new tax growth in commercial, industrial, and personal property.
Let me just take a look here.
I'm sorry.
The
No, that's
residential it's on page 6 of 9 in the minutes, calculating the maximum allowable levy.
No, I want to see the new growth this year compared to last year.
So I do have figures from last year, and they're not quite totaled the same way. So if we break down commercial, industrial, and personal property for this year, commercial is $24,581, industrial is $15,046, and personal property made up the bulk of that new growth in this year's figure at $240,270. Last year, personal property was still relatively high at $224,722. Industrial was greater last year, and that was $39,674. And commercial was also higher last year at $130,904. So in this particular year, there's a little bit less on the commercial industrial side.
Okay, that answers that question. I have others, but I'll share the floor.
Okay, thank you, Council Worthley. Who else would like to ask questions? Councilor Grow.
Nancy Pappas, can you speak a little bit to the process by which properties are evaluated and reassessed every year, and how that relationship between residential and the what I see as a relatively steep rise in evaluation compares to commercial and industrial properties that tend to have a slower, lower, more steady growth, and therefore less swings and shifts in their year-to-year evaluations?
Certainly. So each year we are required to submit values to the Department of Revenue for approval. As part of that, there is a thorough sales analysis that is done. First, we send out sales verification questionnaires to determine which sales are actually qualified and can be used in the analysis. And then it's a very thorough statistical analysis of how do the assessed values sit relative to what these qualified sales prices are. And we basically have to make sure that our assessments are in line with the market sales once we have determined those sales. And we submit quite a bit of reporting to the Department of Revenue that shows information on the analysis that we conducted. Residential values as a whole are much more emotional purchase. They're more volatile. So in an increasing market, basically seen since fiscal 14 in this community, they are increasing, and they are increasing at a faster rate than commercial and industrial. Commercial and industrial purchasers are looking at it in more of an investment environment in terms of financially, does this work for me? It's less emotional and more financial oriented, and they tend to be more stable over time. When we did see decreases in values, which you'd have to go back to fiscal 10 through 13 is the only section that we have included in the packet. Residential will also increase at a faster percentage because of the volatility in that market. So in those years, you see a slight decline in the percentage of the residential class actually, because in part, probably mostly because of the market on a decline.
Can I have a quick follow-up question?
Go ahead, Councilor Grow, and then Councilor Memard is next
So
with us.
is it fair to say with that volatility and that relatively more steep increase in prices that residential property owners are on average, and not specifically to each particular property, on average paying more every year relative to what commercial and industrial properties are paying on average year to year?
If you talk about it in terms of percentage increase, because the class as a whole is increasing at a faster pace, yes, they are seeing a higher percentage increase. Depending on the assessed value of individual properties would really be a factor in terms of, are they actually paying more in tax dollars, which we try to kind of stay away from trying to drill down to what's happening with individual properties, because things are changing within the class and within different property types. But if you are a taxpayer that is seeing a higher than average or on the high end of what we're talking about for market increases, from one year to the next, you're probably seeing a higher increase.
Thank you.
Councilor Memard, I think you're next with your hand up.
Thank you. My question is for Nancy Pappas again, our assessor, and it sort of bridges between what Councilor Grow just asked and what Councilor Wardley was asking before. My perception, again, I wish we had a way of increasing our commercial industrial tax investment and activity in the community, because it would result in more jobs and local jobs and all the rest of it. But the level of activity, Nancy, the number of transactions, we have so few industrial properties in Gloucester. The ones around the harbor front are largely stagnant, like on Commercial Street or along East Main Street. But the number of transactions, the level of activity in the residential market, especially, as you pointed out, condominiums and two families, there's been so much activity over the last couple of years. I mean, it's been a seller's market, because people have been over the last 2 years been able to get incredible pricing for their homes, which drives up value, assessments, and then the cost for all your neighbors paying their taxes, whether or not there's a transaction there. But likewise, a lot of these transactions are at the higher end. I mean, you said the median cost was like $800,000 for a residential transaction, but the way these the tax rates work in terms of people who own a piece of property where the real estate itself is maybe $1 million, and then the house on the lot is another $2 or $3 million. We're giving them a break. And then when they're renting it, they use it as a second family, which I guess we said about 2,000 properties in town are used as seasonal second homes. or are being let out as Airbnb or rental. They're not owner occupied and they're not available on the rental market. They're being used as income properties. The transactions and the level of activity there, it seems like it's a totally different driving force than what our locally based businesses face in Gloucester, where we're on an island, we're isolated from the larger community. We have issues of getting product in and workers in and then getting product out again. I think Gloucester is in a really unique situation, and it's sort of
Counselor, can I interrupt for a second?
I'm sorry, go ahead and answer my question, Nancy. Thank you.
Exactly. It would be great because we're at that part of the public hearing is question.
I apologize for going on.
Thank you. Not, you don't need to apologize. Go ahead, Nancy.
Councilor Memhart, I apologize, but I want to make sure I understand your question. Are you asking me to comment on the activity that we're seeing in the residential sector compared to commercial?
Yes.
Okay.
And how that level of activity in turn drives demand and price. And then from your point of view, the valuation that you need to impose for tax purposes.
The residential market, especially over the last couple of years, has had all factors going in the direction that we're going to see significant increases. There's been limited supply in terms of properties on the market. There's been an extremely high demand. And where we have so much waterfront and beach and places where in this day and age, people want to enjoy the outdoors, we've become even more desirable. And when we analyze those sales, you know, there are instances where we see sales that are a little bit out of the norm. We do a great deal of talking to realtors, attorneys, buyers, sellers, things like that, to make sure that the sales that we are dealing with are qualified. But in this community and in many others, most sales prices were over asking. And that was the norm as reported through multiple listing service. So if people have that desire to purchase and they want that home, it is the more emotional purchase. They're willing to pay over, which they have been. And we basically have to reflect that in the assessed values. We're measuring the market and reflecting that. Commercial, you know, has not necessarily been inactive. For the amount of commercial properties that we have, we still do have sales data, which on a percentage basis is pretty good. And we also are always going to use the income approach because that's really how these properties are bought and sold. So either way, we have to make sure that we're trying to reflect market value for both classes. But in this type of market, we are seeing much more substantial increases on the residential side. But 10% on the commercial and 7.5% on the industrial is not small either.
Thank you. Questions from anyone that has not spoken yet for a question? So I have a question. Can we screen share page 7 of your data, which has the calculating the maximum allowable levy, with the first line being fiscal 22 levy limit of 88,952,909.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So so this, I'm following up on this question because Beverly Palmacci asked this question, and I consistently struggle with this. So this chart says that the residential new growth for Gloucester, for all those new condominiums that we see, is calculating the maximum allowable levy is 1,040,443, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So when citizens see that type of growth, right, they think that somehow that's more taxes coming in for us, so it should quiet the amount of taxes that the rest of us have to pay. And I know that that's not really how this formula works. So could you just kind of go through that right now? Because I think it's always a good question, in my opinion. And it just doesn't, it doesn't transfer to the relief that the rest of us feel when we see all that new building.
So new growth, purpose of the Department of Revenue in the state allowing us to capture this is because new development may result in increased municipal costs. So for instance, Halyard Apartments, if we look at that, it's a residential development, there may be more school enrollment, there may be public safety costs. So we're allowed to bring in the new growth so that we can support as a community the type of things that are happening in terms of construction or development. If values weren't changing at all, what some people don't realize is that you would be paying more every year because of Prop 2.5. Proposition 2.5 basically places a constraint on the levy limit, what can be brought in from year to year, but not necessarily on increases on individual properties. Now, when new growth is part of the tax base, they are carrying the taxes on that property. So whatever that valuation is, they are going to be assessed at that value and that tax rate. So that it carries itself initially, but it also is subject to the 2.5% that will happen in future years. So it helps in terms of budget flexibility so that the municipality can still provide the services that are necessary to the community. But it doesn't necessarily mean that individual taxpayers are going to pay less because of it.
I always find that explanation to be helpful because I've always had that same question and you always explain it to me. This is my 7th year in the council and here you are explaining it again. But I think that that's a common question that people have. So thank you for answering that. So can we get rid of that screen share so I can get back to anyone else that has not asked a question, and then I will return it back to Council Worthley, who has another question. So go ahead, Council, you have the floor.
There's no further questions?
I don't see anybody else that has not asked one raising their hand, so I'm coming back to you.
I appreciate that. Thank you. A couple more questions for Nancy, and then I have a couple of questions for Kenny Costa. Nancy, if we were to shift the tax factor from the recommendation that came out of Budget and Finance is 1.00 to 1.03, like it.
Council Worthy, you are frozen again and we can't hear you. Your Wi-Fi is not working. Council Worthy. Council Worthy, we can't hear you. You're frozen.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
We can hear you now. So we didn't hear it from the beginning. So why don't you continue? Okay,
so I saw the chart that said if we were to shift to 1.03, the tax rate would be $11.73 per thousand for residential and $12.12 per thousand for commercial. Is that, I'm sorry, that's a 39-cent difference. Is that number what, is that last year or is that this year?
That is not this year.
Was it last year's numbers?
That I'm not sure. I don't have it quite handy. Tim Good is looking that up. So maybe Tim, if you want to unmute, you can just respond to see if that's the case.
Yeah, it was in the report.
Those are last year's tax rates.
Okay.
This year it would change on our estimate to 1059 for residential and 1094 for commercial.
So about a 40, no, still 39 cents, right? 39-cent difference. When we shift the burden from some residential taxes to businesses, what type of property owner benefits the most?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Okay, so if the median house is at $580,000, there's obviously, I'm guessing the higher the value, the bigger the savings. So we'd be helping, in my opinion, the person who has the most valuable house.
It is based on value. So if you were to look at just that 1.03 shift, let me go back to that page. Go forward, actually. So because it's a lower property value times the tax rate, the savings on the lower valued homes are less. So savings for the residential at a 250 valued home is only 750, but that's double when you go to the 500. You would double that again if you're going from 500 to $1 million and see the $30 savings for the residential.
Nancy, would you mind screen sharing that for the purpose of us being able to visualize what you're talking about? I'm sorry, but it just.
I'm sorry, I went to the page and neglected to screen share, so I apologize for that.
Yeah, not a problem.
So what I was trying, I think, and hopefully answering Councilor Worthley's question is the savings greater on the residential side for the higher valued properties? And that is correct, because it's based on the assessed value times the tax rate. So what I demonstrated earlier was that it was a $15 saving on a $500 home. If you jump to double that on the $1 million, there would be a savings of $30.
So this effort would save more money for the people with the most valuable houses if we were to shift from anything from 1.00 over to 1.03, for example.
They see a greater savings just based on the shift alone.
Okay. Now, I learned this tonight. If I own a second property in Gloucester, a vacation home or something, are they taxed at the residential rate or the commercial rate?
If it's a residential property is all taxed at the residential rate. So if it is a second home, it is going to get the residential tax rate. Second homes are also liable for a personal property tax for furniture not in domicile. Taxpayers are exempt from personal property in their own home. So they would still receive a real estate tax bill based on the residential rate, and they would also receive a personal property tax bill.
So if I own a second property in Gloucester or a vacation home, I would save more money by a shift that the council decided to give a break to residents. The last question on this, Airbnbs, rental income, are those considered commercial properties or are they residential properties?
I do not believe that they're necessarily commercial properties because it's not something where it's being rented out on a long-term basis. That might be something, Tim or Gary, if you feel like you might be more knowledgeable to comment on. We definitely don't have a designation that's specifically saying that this is an Airbnb. The other thing is with a single family home, you as a taxpayer could rent out your single family home. It's still residential property, but you have the ability to rent it if you wanted to and not occupy it.
Was Tim going to get back to us, confirm that answer?
Yeah, I can weigh in there. It would still be considered residential. Unless it had a classification, say as a motel or a hotel, which would be commercial. Just the fact that you're renting it out doesn't change the classification of the property.
So I just want to understand this. If we give a tax break or shift and ask businesses to pay more on their taxes to help residents and help the homeowner, we're also saying to the person who leaves for this month of July and rents their house out for $20,000 for the summer, we're giving that person a tax break too.
Correct. It flows because it's a change in the rate. It flows to every property classified as residential.
Okay. So that answers some questions for me from the assessor's office. I'd like to ask, I think it's either John Dunn or Kenny Costa a few questions, unless Council President, you want to ask other councils.
Nancy, if you don't mind, you can remove your screen share now, but thank you for putting that up there. And well, I'm going to see if any other new hands are up so we can share the floor. And it looks like Councilor Grow would like to speak again. So go ahead, Councilor.
I really just want a clarification because I think Councilor Worthley glossed over something. If someone has a property as a second property, they are going to pay the residential taxes on the property itself, but they would see an increase in personal property tax because that would be assessed separately from the residential, correct?
That's correct. They would receive a second bill, personal property only, because they don't occupy that property as their domicile.
Right, and they would see an increase in that because the shift would increase that tax rate.
That would be subject to the commercial tax rate, yes.
Thank you.
Anyone else haven't asked, does anyone else have a new question to ask that hasn't spoken twice? Okay, we're going to go back to Council Worthley.
Thank you. Councilor Grow, thank you for that clarification. I wasn't attempting to gloss over it. I'm learning a lot as we go here. Thank you for clarifying that. This is a question for, I think it might be for Kenny to start, Kenny Costa, our city auditor. Every year we have a tax recapitulation sheet, and my understanding is that we have $400,000 set aside this year for exemptions for people who can't afford their taxes. Is that accurate first, about $400,000?
So we, as part of the budget process, we do set aside overlay or reserve for abatements for any taxpayer who does file an abatement. So that is always set aside. So it's typically $400,000, and that is
So-
part of the budget process.
Abatement or exemption, correct?
Correct.
And
Yes, abatement or exemptions, yes.
thank you. And of that 400,000, is it true that the state reimburses us about 70% of that money?
Not that I'm
No.
aware of. No.
No. So the state reimburses us for exemptions, but not abatements.
All exemptions?
I don't know whether it's all exemptions, but many exemptions.
Okay.
Correct.
I had read somewhere that it's about 60 to 70% that the state reimburses, but maybe it's a reflection of the abatements versus the exemptions. Okay, so I looked at a chart yesterday that showed that Varian, one of our largest employers, has paid over the last 15 years, because as far back as the chart goes, has paid $4.5 million in taxes. Could someone on the council or Mr. Dunn, Kenny Costa, share with me how much we think we've paid out in services relative to that $4.5 million we received in tax revenue? Or I can be more specific. Do we provide trash service for Varian? Do we provide teachers for Varian? Do we provide plowing for Varian? Those sorts of things.
Well, I guess I will respond quickly, Counselor. If you would ask me this maybe a month and a half ago, I could have responded. Can't respond tonight.
Oh, you mean to do the research?
I would have to be able to consider it, yes.
Okay, fair enough. I thought of it yesterday when I got these numbers.
So,
Is it safe to say, though, that the number I had before was for every dollar we collect in residential taxes, we spend a little more than that. We spend about $1.15, sorry, $1.24. For every dollar we receive in commercial taxes, we spend about 84 cents. Is that number ballpark even close?
have no idea.
Okay.
If you would ask, if you had asked me 6 weeks ago, could have
Fair
responded.
enough.
Okay,
So councilors, we're not going to start discussing this right now, but Tony, if you, Councilor Gross, if you have a question to ask, we're still in that part of the public hearing.
Well, Jeff just asked if any counselors could answer the question on what services they get. I have an answer, yes.
Okay, go ahead. You have the floor. Go ahead.
All their employees get their roads paved, they get their kids educated in our schools, they get the hospital services, the ambulance services. All of these things are part of their equation to whether or not to do business here is the services that the city provides that they help generously to pay for.
So just so I can understand that, the residents who work there and live here, Varian is paying towards that, but those residents aren't paying their own personal taxes too?
Of course they are, but as part of the community, they are paying their fair share.
Okay, I think we're starting to deliberate on this right now.
I have
So
a question,
I
Madam.
feel like we're a little bit getting off track. I'm gonna, Councilor Nolan has patiently had his hand up and he hasn't spoken. So what is your question, Councilor Nolan?
My question would be to Councilor Worthley. How much profit did Varian or Applied Materials make last year out of their Gloucester offices? Because commercial property makes money. That's what they do. And that's what they provide. We provide land for them to make money. Services, as far as on their private property, has no regard to public expenses. And at $300,000 a year, that's still a great amount of money. But we do have, neighborhoods that pay significantly more than that. on residential with no services, such as Magnolia Shores and the housing development off of Atlantic Street. They pay almost $800,000 a year. So to say that you're asking about public services for a private business and what the public can do to subsidize a private business that is a for-profit is kind of misleading to the questions that you're asking tonight for the council. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't think it's misleading to find out what we spend, but I appreciate your point.
Council Grow has his hand raised. What question do you have?
I want to follow on Councilor Worthley's question and ask Mr. Dunn or Mr. Costa. My brother lives in Hubby House, his condominium. Can you tell me how much the city pays for his trash removal or his plowing or his utilities or anything like that? The answer is zero, because he is required to get pay for his own trash removal. He's required to pay for their own plowing on their private property. I don't understand the argument you're trying to make, Councilor Worthley, to be honest.
I was just asking questions.
Well, the questions, you're asking questions, but the point of the questions are misleading. Varian gets no less services than my brother gets in his condo.
So let's stay on track for the public hearing right now. Councilors, does anyone have any further questions? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. And I'm going to ask for a committee report from Councilor Memard.
The committee report from Budget and Finance Committee on a motion by Councilor Worthley, seconded by Councilor Memhard. The Budget and Finance Committee voted by roll call, 2 in favor, with 1, Councilor Gross, opposed, to recommend that the City Council adopt a residential tax classification factor of 1.000 for fiscal year 2023, and I so move.
Second.
Motion is made by Councilor Memard, and it is seconded by Councilor Worthley.
I would like to make a motion to amend that.
Second.
Go ahead. Let's ask Councilor Grow to make his motion.
I'm going to be. I'm weighing my options here, but I move that we keep the 1.03 that we have last year, and I also move.
So can you be more specific? The amendment is to maintain the 1.03 for residential tax factor for fiscal 23.
Is that an amendment to the motion, or do we need to vote on the first motion first?
Nope, that's an amendment. That's amendment on the motion. So that is acceptable. And the amendment is 1.03 residential tax factor for fiscal.
Council President.
Go ahead, Kenny. Thank you.
If I may, it would be recommended that the City Council adopt a residential tax classification factor of 0.997100 that equates to a CIP shift of 1.03 for fiscal year 2023.
Yeah,
I believe that's. Sorry.
Well,
if Jason didn't get it,
can you repeat that, Kenny?
Yes. It would be on a motion to recommend that the City Council adopt a residential tax classification factor of 0.997100 that equates to a CIP shift of 1.03 for fiscal year 2023.
And I so move.
Second.
Thank
So
you.
Jason moved that, and it was seconded by Councilor Nolan. Yes.
On the
Okay.
motion,
On
on the amendment.
the amendment.
I'd like a little chance to explain. I would personally prefer to actually increase that a bit more, but for the purposes of tonight, and I think for the temperature of the room, I'd just like to explain the reasoning, and that is that we have seen a fairly unprecedented growth in the residential valuations of properties in this community. And I've spent some time looking over the numbers of the last few years and had some conversations with the assessor's office. And if I just go back to 5 years ago to FY 2019, and you take the average cost. Now, I'm going to preface this by saying that we're talking about dealing with this with a blunt axe, as opposed to, as I said, the assessor's office deals with scalpels. But the average residential property was valued in 2019 at $474,669. That's straight math. And at the tax rate at that time, which was $1,269, the average tax bill for that property would have been $6,023. In 2023, at a 1.00 conversion at 1062, is that correct? 1062. The average property is $663,453. It's gone up about 35.5%, 36% on simple math. And that tax bill is now $7,045. So you're looking at an increase of $1,022 in that 5 years. Similarly, commercial property in 2019 averaged $627,726. Tax rate at 1311, which was a 1.03 conversion, gave an average tax bill of $8,230. The average tax bill for a commercial property at $790,633 this year would be $8,396.52 at the 10.62. That is a $66 increase over 5 years. If you look at the industrial property taxes, the average property in 2019 was $822,314 with a tax bill at 1311 of $10,780.53. In 23, the average property value in industrial is $957,438, and at 1062, the tax bill is $10,167.99, $700 less than it was 5 years ago. And I invite the assessor's office to correct my math at any point here. The point is that despite the complaints that might be talked about the commercial industrial rates, they are paying significantly less per value over this time than residential property owners are paying. That the bill that residential property owners has gone up much more significantly than commercial and industrial properties. I think that a shift ought to go more significantly, but I think that at the very least, we ought to maintain the current shift at 1.03. I think that we need to be realistic that this is one part of affordable housing. And yes, while I agree with Councilor Worthley that this will definitely benefit wealthier property owners, the impact on lower income and lower valued property owners should not be understated. Those impacts hit those people significantly. Yes, $30 on $1 million property, who cares? But any dollars on lower income properties is a step in the right direction. And frankly, I don't see how we could be charging our commercial properties essentially less money on average today than we are 5 years ago. So that's my argument for maintaining at 1.03. Given my socialist nature, I'd rather see it go a little farther, but I'm perfectly happy to see it at 1.03 and look at next year and perhaps reevaluate. So I'd leave it there.
Councilors, let me be very clear right now. We are discussing the amendment to the main motion right now. Okay, so we have to get consensus on this before we can, and then we have to vote this amendment. Okay, so who else would like to speak on this amendment? Is everyone clear on what the amendment is? Okay, Councilor Memard and then Councilor Nolan.
I appreciate Jason's points, and I welcome this discussion and conversation and bringing as much light as possible to it. Big picture, it's curious that the state legislature has provided us this opportunity to shift. I find that it puts us in an interesting position. I have to say that personally, my perception as a resident of East Gloucester and somebody who's operated a business down on the fort for 40 years is colored in large part by the fact that the commercial industrial property on our waterfront is so strictly limited and constrained by our marine industrial water dependent zoning locally and at the state level by the designated port area, well-intentioned to help preserve our fishing industry, but basically tying the hands of anybody who owns property in what should be a prosperous industrial park of Gloucester Harbor, generating jobs and revenue in the community. You know, the ice company's value is you know, it's almost an acre of real estate. It's about $900,000. It's gone down because I can't do anything with it, and that we sold it because we were going bankrupt, and the bank foreclosed. And the new owner, who's owned it for 5-6 years, found out the same thing I did. You know, it's derelict because you can't do anything with it based on the overlay of restrictions that were well-intentioned to preserve our fishing industry heritage, but leave us no room to do anything with that real estate. The harbor, Gloucester Harbor, should be a major job and business generator. And in fact, it's just, you know, holding on a few little bright lights, Mortallero Lobster or Ocean Crest Seafood and Fertilizer or GMGI, the ones that didn't get exemptions so that they could put a restaurant there before the curfew. But again, Gloucester Harbor is a big part of our commercial industrial base. It should be worth a lot of money, and it's not, because you can't do anything with it. You can't make money with it, no matter how smart or resourceful or deep-pocketed you are. So that's my perspective.
Thank you, Councillor. So on the amendment to the main motion right now, who would like to speak that hasn't spoken on this? Councillor Nolan.
First of all, I feel for Councilor Memhard and the people on the waterfront. That's another discussion we could probably have about classification of business on waterfront versus commercial, because it is a starving part of our city that I'd like to see revitalized. The fact of the matter is that commercial property is commercial property, and the majority of the commercial property in the city of Gloucester makes a profit off of their property. It's not like a house that you're paying taxes to live in, that you have rights to public access for schools, fire protection, police, and all the other city services, limited to whether you live in a private road or not. But a commercial base tax being a small amount higher only makes sense to me because you're using it to make a business. You're making a profit off of this. Now, the amount that Nancy Pappas had said on the increases for the residential, I believe she said it was like 16% versus a much lower percent for commercial. So residential inherently is already paying more on what their tax growth is on their property and in value. I think that the 1.03 to remain the same is the safest bet. It's the smallest amount that is around for the area. And as a business owner and friends with a lot of other people that own, commercial properties, they understand they make money off of this. I not got one call from any business owner or anybody, and other than a few real estate people over the last 7 years that have complained about this in the Chamber of Commerce, who inherently always complain about it. But I think it's a shift that is well deserved, and even a small amount for our residential is important. And I really do not like the idea of a cup of coffee or a couple cup of coffees a month or whatever, because sometimes that cup of coffee is all a working person has in a residential area to enjoy themselves for that month with paying their bills. So I'd rather say it's saving the $15 and saying it's just going to cost a cup of coffee or a couple of cups of coffee, just for future references. I don't like that being said. But that's why I support the 1.03. Thank you.
So I would like to state that I am too supporting the amendment to the main motion. I think the 1.03 is appropriate. We've stuck with that for the last 7 years. This is my 7th year on the council. And at this point in time, just based on the conversations that occurred at BNF and part of this, I believe that that's the right way to go. Who else is there anyone else that hasn't spoken on this? Councilor Worthley on the amendment to the main motion.
On the amendment. So I think sometimes we get away from remembering that we're one community Residents depend on businesses for services. Businesses depend on residents for employment. Residents depend on businesses for taxes. It's one community. And I think we spend a lot of energy on doing what we think is in the best interest of residents and business owners. And this isn't the place that we can save people money, right? I'm not going to sit here and say our budget is out of whack, but that's the place where if someone really has a concern about saving money, that's not $15. That's where we need to focus our energy on. My concern is that when we talk about adding, we ask businesses to pay their 100% of their taxes and we ask them to pay 3% more. It's not a lot. I'm not going to say that it is. But that 3% more is on a percentage of our population, of our our taxpayers of 8.9%. So we're asking 8.9% of people to pay 3% more and spread that over the other 92. It's inconsequential. But since it's inconsequential, I'm actually going to support this motion. We can move forward. And I don't disagree that every dollar we can save for a resident matters. I think you said, given the temperature of this, I'd like to take some of the heat out of this. If any of my questions seem like they're misleading, I generally try to understand this as best I can. I apologize for encouraging the Gorton's representative to speak. I think we're doing the best we can for our residents, and I really think we need to work a lot harder to try to grow our commercial and industrial base. And whatever it takes, if it's tax classification, if there's incentives, we need to do that because that actually helps reduce the cost of housing, the cost of taxes of residents. So I'm ready to move forward on this. I appreciate the dialogue tonight.
Anyone else like to speak on the amendment to the main motion? Councilor O'Hara.
Thank you. This is a very, very difficult decision for all of us, I'm sure. It is for me. I know as a 20-year business person plus, the pains of running a business and running a business in 2022 with the difficulties of finding employees. It's everyone knows, you know, whether you're a business owner or you're trying to get a business owner to do some work. To say that all businesses are making money, I think is a stretch. Maybe that's true, but I think probably during the pandemic, there were probably many businesses that were bleeding and bleeding badly. As Councilor Wordley had mentioned about, we need to increase our business capacity of businesses in Gloucester. I don't know why the gentleman from Gorton's was given the directive to be in attendance tonight. I often wonder why Gorton's is even in Gloucester. I think it'd be a terrible tragedy for us to lose Gorton's. They truck everything in, they truck everything out. We have a road system, 128, which is just a quagmire of problems, beginning in Beverly, and they move their freight all over the country. We need to keep the businesses that we have. We can't afford to lose one business. As was mentioned at BNF, we are slowly becoming a bedroom community. We lose these businesses and then we'll see property taxes increase. As was mentioned, how much, you know, whether it's Hovey School, the condominiums, city services, but they're far less. The businesses don't have children in our school systems, which we need to educate our children, and it comes with a cost. Again, this is a very, very difficult decision for myself, and I'm sure for my fellow councilors. But again, we need businesses in our city. We need to keep our businesses. That's our first main objective, is we don't lose a single business to any other city or town.
So Councilor, on the amendment to the main motion?
That's correct. No,
So are you, I don't know if you're supporting or against. Are you just,
We'll decide that when it comes time to vote.
okay, okay, that's fair. Thank you. Counselor O'Neill
Yep,
on the amendment.
right, on the amendment, the 1.03. This is a really hard decision for me. I'm a Ward 2 counselor living in Ward 1. To me, those are two different worlds. Ward 2 has a lot of businesses. Ward 1, not so many. A lot of businesses struggled during the pandemic. A lot of us still are. An argument could be made that if we make the tax classification factor at 1.00, residents and businesses pay the same rate. That seems fair. Also, businesses represent less than 9% of the total tax revenue. An argument could be made that because they're only 9%, they should pay more. On the other hand, these are the things I've been wrestling with. On the other hand, if they're only 9% of our tax revenue, why are we crushing them? Not that we're crushing them, but why are we adding to their expenses, right? I don't think that's a good message to send to businesses. I think we need to work on getting more businesses here in town. I hesitate to mention zoning. That's a real stickler for me.
Council, let's
So,
stick with
yep.
tax classification right
right,
now
but-
on the amendment.
Right, so, Hortons just gave the library $250,000. Cape Ann Savings Bank contributes to the city year-round in many ways. I think Bank Gloucester does too. Applied Materials, I don't know how many people they employ. I just think we should do everything we can to keep the businesses we have and search and find more opportunities for more businesses to come here. And that will increase our tax base. I think maybe we're not, I think we just need to find more. I think we need to work harder at that. So thank you.
Thank you. Just to answer your question, Applied Materials employs 900 employees.
Thank you.
Councilor Grow?
Want to make some clarifications. You know, I want to make sure that people understand we're not crushing businesses with our taxes. And John Dunn made the point at the BNF meeting that, you know, communities nearby us are similar to size. Peabody, Danvers have much bigger commercial property percentages. They also have substantially larger shifts in their property taxes. That's not what's preventing, our tax rate is not what's preventing people coming to Gloucester. 1.03 or 1.00 is not going to be the determining factor in
Understood.
whether or not somebody comes to Gloucester. But also keep in mind that all the expenses that we talk about, the plowing and the utilities and the trash removal and everything else that we talk about in these conversations are all expenses that businesses can write off as part of their taxes. They're getting a tax break on those very issues, those very things. Residents don't get to write those things off. You don't get to write off your electrical bills. Varian does. And when we look at talking about the discrepancy between how much property taxes has gone up in terms of the residential impact and how relatively little it's gone up in terms of the commercial and industrial, you know, we're really crushing the residents. And that's, we're not going to fix that easily with the shift that we have because of the great discrepancy that we have. Again, as I said, I think we should go higher, but I think that we need to take baby steps in this regard. But let's not overstate how difficult our tax burden is on the commercial and industrial properties, because the numbers don't paint that picture in the same way. Individual parcels may vary. You know, there's parcels that are feeling a lot more impact than others, but by and large, residential property owners are certainly feeling the pinch a heck of a lot harder than I would say your average businesses.
Okay, I think we should call the question. I'm going to give Council O'Neill one last opportunity, but I think we have to move on and we're ready to call the question on this amendment. But go ahead, Council O'Neill, in fairness to you, you have the floor.
Thank you. Perhaps crushing was the wrong word, so I was grasping for words and that was the wrong word to use. But I do have a small business and I do know that I rent this space and, you know, it may affect me. As well as, you know, property tax is going to affect me. So, you know, if taxes get raised on my landlord here, you know, he may turn around and raise my rent here, you know, but I'm just letting you know that this is not an easy decision because I'm going to get hit either way. So.
Thank you,
Anyway,
Councilor.
And I need to listen to my constituents as well.
Thank you. So, so let's just be clear. Kenny Costa, would you just, the motion was made by Councilor Grow and it was seconded by Councilor Nolan. Can you just, this is for the amendment. Can you just repeat what it is that you so eloquently articulated?
Yes, thank you. Through the president. So it's moved that the city council adopt a residential tax classification factor of 0.997100 that equates to a CIP shift of 1.03 for fiscal year 2023.
Okay, and that was moved by Councilor Grow and seconded by Councilor Nolan. I think we've talked this one through, so we're ready to vote on the amendment to the main motion. Councilor Gross.
Is this on the main motion or the amendment?
This is on the amendment to the main motion.
Yes.
Councilor Grow.
Yes.
Councilor Majota.
Yes.
Councilor Memard.
No.
Councilor Nolan.
Yes.
Councilor O'Hara.
No.
Councilor O'Neill.
No.
Councilor Worthley.
Yes.
Councilor Gilman, yes. The amendment to the main motion passes 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 in favor, 3 opposed. So now we are back to the main motion. Does everyone now understand what the main motion is? The main motion now is, Kenny, would you just announce that again so we can be absolutely clear? Kenny, you're on mute.
I apologize. I was actually just disconnected. I just reconnected now. I apologize.
Okay. So we're back to the main motion. The amendment passed, 6 in favor, 3 opposed. So now we are back to the main motion.
Okay. So it would be moved to recommend that the city council adopt a residential tax classification factor of 0.997100 that equates to a CIP shift of 1.03 for fiscal year 2023.
Okay, who is going to move that?
It was already moved.
Oh,
This, I'm a little confused. This was just voted on.
No,
If it's an
no, the amendment was voted on. Now we're back to the main motion.
Is the main motion moot based on?
No,
your
the main
amendment?
motion now includes the 1.03. The main motion now is what we just amended, right? So now we're back to the 1.03.
So we're voting on the same.
We are.
Oh, yes.
Theoretically, but you have to go back to the first one. We had to approve the amendment, which we did, and now we're back to it. So it's
the same vote.
It's the same vote. Okay, so is there further discussion on this, on the new main motion, which is 0.997100 for CPI of 1.03 for tax, for the residential tax? Correct, Kenny?
Correct. So the residential tax classification factor of 0.997100 that equates to a CIP shift of 1.03 for fiscal year 2023. That would be the main motion. Correct.
Okay. I will move that. Is there a second?
Well, it was moved by Scott initially and seconded, so we're just down to the voting of the main motion.
No, what was moved originally was 1.00.
Right. But the new motion, the motion is now amended to include the change in the number. So it's still the main motion, and it's still been made.
Okay, so Scott's still the owner, even though he doesn't want this. Okay, if that's what we do with Robert's rules, I'm game. So Scott, that's your motion now is 1.03 for.
I don't know how to. I don't want to own that. So
I didn't think you would.
Don't worry.
Okay. So Joanne, I mean, your call. I mean, I'm willing to move this back to the first motion.
Okay, so you had the main motion, you made an amendment. The amendment passes 6-3.
Yep.
Now you're going to vote on the main motion that includes the amendment, which is 1.03.
That's correct. And
Yeah.
who is to move that now?
I don't know who,
I think we have to give someone the opportunity to move it again because the person that initially moved it doesn't want that. So, I mean.
I'll move it. So moved.
It's out of the committee report.
What?
Wasn't it out of the committee report? Wasn't that the motion that was on the table?
Yes.
That got amended?
Yes.
It did.
Yes, and we need to follow Robert's rules.
Yeah, I'm with Tony. Just the motion is on the table as amended, regardless of what Scott thinks about it. It at this point.
Okay, because he can change his vote if he doesn't like it. Okay, I get it.
I have to agree with it.
All right, so the motion's on the floor for Council Memard, and initially it was seconded by, help me. Subcommittee?
Councilor Worthley.
Sean has his hand up. I don't know. if he's-
Council Nolan.
Council Nolan, do you have a point of order or point of procedure?
Well, we had a motion that was moved by the original motion from Council Memhard and Council Worthley. We had an amendment added to it from Councilor Grow, seconded by myself. We voted in favor of the amendment, but we still need to go back to the original order to vote down or up the original order.
No.
No.
The amendment now is the original motion. We amended the motion that came out of B&F. So
Right,
now it's.
That's what I said. We have to vote to the original motion to what we amended.
Right. We're voting the original motion as amended. That's
Exactly.
That's what we got. And Scott doesn't have to own it.
Okay, so I'm gonna move it. No, Tony, all right, give me your nonverbals right now.
Those
All
are
right.
nonverbals.
Think you know more than I do on this,
The
so help
original
me out,
motion,
okay?
the original motion.
Yeah.
It's amended. Now we're back to the original motion as amended. Doesn't need to be moved or seconded again. We just vote on the original motion as amended.
Okay. So the original motion as amended was Council Memard and seconded was
Council Worthley.
Council Worthy. All right, great.
Now,
I think we're all clear. Thank you all for your clarity. I appreciate that. So everybody's clear on what the motion is right now.
Point of order.
You have discussion?
Yeah, that's my point of order is that I don't want to belabor this any longer, but the motion should now be open for discussion.
Yes, thank you, Council Grow. So is there a discussion, councilors, on this motion, the main motion that we're back to right now? We'll start with Council Memard's got his hand up.
I would just like to take this opportunity to thank and recognize Ken Reel, Executive Director of the Greater Cape Ann Chamber of Commerce, for his years of service prior to his retirement, and that this is his last tax classification battle. And I'm sorry that we couldn't come out with an outcome that was has been long viewed as desirable by the chamber and the commercial and industrial base that they represent. That's all I have to say.
Anyone else on this discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote. Counselor Gross,
Yes.
Counselor Grow,
Yes.
Counselor Majota,
Yes.
Counselor Memard,
No.
Counselor Nolan,
Yes.
Counselor O'Hara,
Yes.
Counselor O'Neill,
Yes.
Counselor Worthley,
Yes.
Counselor Gilman, yes. The yeses have it 8 in favor, 1 opposed.
Motion to
Is there a
reconsider?
motion? There's a motion to reconsider by Counselor Memard. Is there a second?
Point of order. Sorry, Scott, you can't make that motion.
I was trying to slip you up, Jason.
Yeah, nice try. Madam President, I'd like to make a motion to reconsider.
Second.
Is this joke on me or who's the joke on?
It's a
No,
proper.
his vote to reconsider is a no.
So, so Grow is going to make the motion to reconsider and not Scott, and Counselor Nolan is seconded that.
Yes.
Okay, everyone understands what a motion to reconsider means? Okay, on the motion to reconsider, Counselor Gross,
No.
Counselor Grow,
No.
Counselor Majota,
No.
Counselor Memard,
For Kenny's sake, no.
Counselor Nolan,
No.
Counselor O'Hara,
No.
Counselor O'Neill,
No.
Counselor Worthley,
No.
Counselor Gilman, no. The motion to reconsider fails. 0 in favor, 9 opposed. That's it. Thank you, Assessor's Office, very much. And we certainly had a very vibrant and deep conversation. So thank you all for that. Next up, go ahead, Counselor Nolan.
Without any objections, I'm going to step off the meeting. Everybody have a great night and thank you very much.
Okay, good night, Counselor Nolan.
Thanks, Sean.
Thank you. Next order of business, Madam Clerk.
Is the update on the Council on Aging and the Dogtown Preservation Commission by City Council Representative Councilor Al Gilman.
Would you all like me to just wait until the next meeting to discuss these two matters?
Yes.
Without objection, I think I can feel the exhaustion from this team right now. So I will wait for the next meeting to eagerly explain these two boards. And next order of business, Madam Clerk.
Is Councilor's request to the mayor.
Okay, we're going to go in the roll call order. Counselor Gross.
I'm all set.
Counselor Grow.
Nothing for me.
Counselor Majota.
Just one, I'll keep it short. On Harold Ave, where the train tracks are on the trees are overstepping streets from 6 through 10 Harold, and it's becoming very dangerous, and the residents there are very concerned that the trees are in their property and they're worried that they can fall on their house or in the yard. So just see what the city or the MBTA could do. Whoever owns those trees could see what they can do to protect the residents in that area. That's it.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Memard.
One item, just for everyone's information, the public, the Mount Pleasant Avenue water infrastructure project is proceeding. In some cases, they're reconnecting homes to the either the new temporary or the new permanent water piping. As a result of that, there is a lot of disruption in the water and the discoloration of water that households are getting. This was anticipated and was forewarned, but it's impacting people now all of a sudden, and they're concerned about using the discolored water, and they are requested to please run their faucets or flush their toilets or run a spigot outside to help clear the water from the discoloration that is a result of the construction and the activity there. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Nolan. Oh, he's gone. Sorry. Counselor O'Hara.
Thank you. I just want to thank, we have Veterans Day coming up. And I want to thank all the veterans who've protected our country, protected our freedom that we so much enjoy on a daily basis. Also want to thank the men and women who are in the armed services. Can't say enough for everything that you do that we don't know about 24/7, 365 all over the world that, again, allows us to enjoy the freedom. And again, thank you. And thank everyone for tonight's meeting.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor O'Neill. You are muted, Tracy.
Thank you. I just have one I would like to request through the mayor that the DPW put Mason Street and its sidewalks on the list to be paved. The elderly use that, the Central Grammar Apartments use Mason Street, and they walk with their walkers and canes and wheelchairs to Shaw's Market to get their groceries, and it's a bit dangerous, and I don't want any of them to fall and break a hip. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Worthley.
Yes, thank you. Just a couple. So I have submitted an order that was heard by ONA, Ordinance Administration Committee, last week for the first time regarding potentially putting renewable energy on municipal buildings. And it's not for discussion tonight, but the Ordinance Administration Committee continue that to December 5th with the request that any councilors have questions to send those to the clerk's office so that we can get city staff and myself and whatever resources we can to answer those questions prior to the next ONA meeting. So if you have questions about that order, obviously you can send them in whenever you'd like, but the sooner the better. That's helpful. I want to, first, out of respect for Councilor Gilman, you may want to do this yourself. I just want to, you've done a lot of work on the railings and fence around Mill Pond and Mill River. I want to thank Josh Arnold for organizing that and the other volunteers that have done that the last couple weekends. And I think he wants to do something else this weekend. I'll leave it to you to announce that, but I have no other requests to the mayor.
Thank you, Counselor. So to follow up on the Mill River, Councilor Worthy worked that event 2 different times. The second time he had his entire family with him. So he did, was definitely, did a lot of work on the railings. They're lovely. So thank you.
Happy to
and
do
I
it.
believe the next event is planned for the weekend after Thanksgiving. And that's to do some cutback on some of the playing fields. Josh is taking a leadership role there and working that with Mike Hale. So thank you. So I have just a couple of quick things. I want to remind people that on November 22nd, we are going to be having the public hearing on hawkers, peddlers, transient vendors, and special events. That's going to be heard on Monday at ONA. And the reason why we're pushing that public hearing quickly is, with all the right notices, is that an ordinance has to wait for 31 days after it's passed, and this particular ordinance becomes effective on January 1st. And Councilor Gross has spent a lot of time on this. It's very detailed. It's very thorough. So we'll be hearing that on Monday, and that will be up for public hearing on the 22nd. My suggestion is that, and I've asked Joanne, is to provide us or someone on the council with the names of the current vendors, because they should know what's going on, because this is something that might be of interest for them to see the changes. And I happened to meet with the flower person at the, because I was buying flowers the other day and I did explain it to her and she asked me to send her the council order, which I did. So she's aware of that public hearing. So I just want to ask Joanne to provide us with that information. Maybe you could give it to me and I can divvy it out to the ward counselors to call and just let them know that this is coming up, because I want everyone that's involved with this to have an opportunity to know what the public hearing is.
I will.
Okay, that's great. And then the final thing I would just like to say is, from the bottom of my heart, Joanne, your team, our team in the city clerk's office and all the volunteers and the registrars did a standout job for the election. And I have a total empathy towards the amount of work that you all do and the amount of time and energy and dedication. So job well done to the clerk's office. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'll pass that message on to the rest of the staff.
Thank you. So I think we're good. And
I forgot one thing.
Worthley would like to say something. Go
I
ahead.
was thinking something. So obviously, I don't take any thunder away from the clerk's office. Great job, and obviously recognizing them, Councilor Gilman. Councilor Hara mentioned Veterans Day. We have a ceremony that Adam Kukru has organized, and I'm just looking at the invitation right now. I believe it's 9 a.m. at the high school. Love to see everyone there. And my son and Jim Dalpiaz are playing taps. He's 13 years old. He's actually looking forward to it. He's excited and wants to contribute in that way. So hope to see everybody there on Veterans Day. They do a very fine event.
Great, thank you. All right, counselors, is there a motion to adjourn this exciting meeting tonight?
So moved.
Thank you, Council O'Neill. The second by
Motion to
Council.
reconsider.
Yeah, I think not. So let's do our final roll call for the evening. Council Gross,
Yes.
Council Grow,
Yes.
Council Majota,
Yes.
Council Memard, Council Memard. Give us a thumbs
I'll
up.
put my name on that.
Okay, Council Nolan.
Yes. Yes.
Council Nolan is not here. I'm sorry. Councilor O'Hara,
Yes.
Councilor O'Neill,
Yes.
Council Worthley,
Yes, and thank you.
Council Gilman. Motion passes to adjourn. 8 in favor, 1 absent. Thank you. Thank you, Joanne. Thank you all.
Good night.
Thank you, Joanne.
Thank you. Good
Good
night.
night.